If I die in here, do I die out there too? That was the last message Alex received from his best friend, Tyler, before his headset disconnected. The problem? Tyler wasn't online anymore. He wasn't anywhere. Alex had always been obsessed with Vert gaming, but Elysium Online was different. It wasn't just another game, it was an experience. A full-dive virtual reality system so advanced that players claimed it felt more real than real life. The technology behind it was a mystery, its developers unknown, but the game had exploded overnight. Millions logged in, eager to escape their ordinary lives. But some never logged out. Alex hadn't been concerned at first. When Tyler stopped responding, he figured his friend had just fallen asleep in his headset. It happened all the time. But when hours passed, then days, and still no word from Tyler, Alex started to worry. That's when he saw the news. Mysterious disappearances linked to Elysium Online. The article was vague, but the stories were the same. Players going in and never coming back out. Families reporting their loved ones in unresponsive states. Doctors baffled. There were whispers online, rumors that Elysium wasn't just a game, that something inside it was keeping people trapped. Tyler had warned him. This game isn't what we think it is, man. I swear something's wrong with it. But Alex hadn't listened. Now he had no choice. He had to go in. He had to find Tyler. Taking a deep breath, he put on the headset. Connection established. The world around him melted away. Then, darkness. When Alex opened his eyes, he was standing in the middle of Elysium Online. Except it didn't feel like a game. The air was thick and warm, carrying the scent of damp earth. The sky stretched overhead, painted in deep hues of violet and gold, a surreal sunset that never seemed to change. Around him, a bustling medieval-style marketplace sprawled, filled with players and merchants shouting their wares. But something was off. There were no menus, no inventory, no status bars. And the most unsettling thing, there was no logout button. Panic clawed at his chest. Every Vert game had a way to leave, some kind of emergency exit in case of glitches. But here, there was nothing. Alex grabbed the nearest player, a woman in steel armor, her eyes darting nervously. "Hey, how do you log out?" She flinched at the question. "You're new, aren't you?" she whispered. Alex's skin prickled. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then leaned closer. "There's no way out." Alex's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. The game has to have an exit." The woman shook her head. "They took it away." Alex barely had time to process her words before a sudden commotion erupted in the marketplace. People were shouting, backing away from something in the center of the square. A player stood there, completely still, his body rigid, eyes open, unblinking. Floating above his head was a single chilling word. Disconnected. Alex's breath caught. The player wasn't moving, wasn't responding to the people shaking him. But he was still here. He was talking just a second ago. Someone muttered. Then he just stopped. A cold realization settled over Alex. The rumors were true. People weren't just getting trapped in the game. Their bodies were being left behind. Alex took a step back, his pulse hammering in his ears. The marketplace, once a lively hub of trade and chatter, had fallen into an eerie silence. All eyes were locked on the disconnected player. He wasn't moving, wasn't speaking, but he wasn't gone either. Net guards approached, their movements unnervingly synchronized. They grabbed the frozen player by the arms and dragged him away without a word. No one stopped them. No one even questioned it. Alex turned to the armored woman. "Where are they taking him?" She swallowed hard. "The Lost District." "The what?" She glanced around as if someone might be listening. "It's where they send the ones who get stuck." Alex's stomach twisted. "So that's it? They just take him away?" The woman's gaze darkened. "It's better than what happens if you try to fight back." Before Alex could ask what she meant, she was already moving, vanishing into the crowd. The marketplace slowly returned to normal, but the energy had shifted. Players kept their heads down. Imps went back to selling goods, their voices mechanical, hollow. Alex clenched his fists. Tyler was in here somewhere. If what she said was true, if players could get stuck, then Tyler might be one of them. He needed to find the Lost District. Navigating Elysium was different than Alex expected. There were no quest markers, no waypoints, just an endless world stretching in all directions. The more he explored, the more he realized how alive the game felt. And that was the problem. The Inks were too real. Their eyes followed him as he walked past. They blinked. They breathed. Some even whispered when they thought he wasn't listening. Don't trust him. He doesn't belong here. Another one of the lost. Alex ignored them, focusing on his goal. He followed the guards through winding alleyways and empty streets, the sounds of the market fading behind him. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. Then he saw it. A massive decaying structure at the edge of the city, its gates sealed with thick iron chains. Beyond them, rows of players stood frozen in place, their eyes wide open, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and confusion. The Lost District. Alex's breath hitched. Some of them had been like this for days, maybe weeks, maybe longer. A whisper tickled the back of his mind. What if Tyler was in there? He gritted his teeth. He had to get inside. As Alex studied the locked gates, a voice spoke behind him. You shouldn't be here. He spun around. A man stood in the shadows, his face gone, his eyes sharp with paranoia. His clothes were tattered, his hands shaking at his sides. Who are you? Alex asked. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. A survivor. Alex's heart pounded. You mean you got out? The man let out a dry, humorless laugh. Out? No, but I've been here long enough to know the truth. Alex hesitated. What truth? The man's expression darkened. Elysium isn't a game. Alex stiffened. That's impossible. I logged in. I remember putting on the headset. The man shook his head. Do you? Alex opened his mouth to respond, but he hesitated. Did he? He remembered sitting in his chair, remembered the sensation of putting on the headset. But after that, nothing. Just darkness. Then waking up here. The man leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. You're already logged out. Alex's skin prickled. What do you mean I'm already logged out? The man didn't answer right away. His sunken eyes darted around, as if searching for unseen watchers. His hands twitched at his sides, his breath uneven. Then he whispered, Have you ever seen a neck bleed? Alex frowned. What? In any game you've played, the man continued, voice tight with urgency, have you ever seen a non-playable character bleed? Alex's mind raced. He had played hundreds of games, spent countless hours in virtual worlds. Imps could take damage, sure, but they didn't bleed. He shook his head. The man's jaw tightened. That's because they're just code. But here there's something else. Alex exhaled sharply. You're not making any sense. Aren't I? The man stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. Try it. Cut one of them. See what happens. Alex stared at him. Was this guy insane? Nooks were just scripted characters. They weren't real, but the way he was speaking, the desperation in his eyes, it made Alex's stomach churn. Before he could say anything, the man tensed. His gaze shot past Alex's shoulder. They're watching, he hissed. I've said too much. He turned to run. Wait. Alex reached for him, but the man was already gone, vanishing into the darkened streets. Alex stood there, heart pounding. Try it. Cut one of them. See what happens. The words lodged in his brain like a splinter. The market was just as busy as before. Inks moved in perfect loops, their dialogue repeating with artificial cheer. But now, Alex saw them differently. Were they just code, or were they something else? He approached a merchant's stall, his throat dry. The vendor, a middle-aged man with a thick apron, grinned at him. Ah, a fine day for trade, traveler. Can I interest you in? I need directions, Alex interrupted. Where's the Lost District? The merchant's smile faltered. Then his expression twitched. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Alex saw it. The way his face glitched, distorting for the briefest moment before smoothing back into a neutral mask. I'm sorry, traveler, but there is no such place. Alex's pulse spiked. He had just seen the Lost District. That's not true, he pressed. I saw the guards take someone there. The merchant didn't move, didn't blink. Then, in a voice that was just slightly off, he said, "You must be mistaken." Something was very wrong. Alex reached forward, grabbing the vendor's wrist. His skin was warm, solid, real, but something was missing. A pulse. The merchant's head snapped up. His eyes locked onto Alex's with a sudden, unnatural intensity. Then he smiled. "You shouldn't be asking those kinds of questions, traveler." A chill shot down Alex's spine. His grip tightened. "What are you?" The merchant only smiled wider. Then, he reached up and touched Alex's forehead. A jolt of pain ripped through Alex's skull. His vision fractured, the world around him flickering like a broken screen. Voices whispered at the edge of his hearing, too distorted to understand. Then, just as suddenly, it was over. Alex staggered back, gasping for breath. The marketplace was normal again. The people moved. The sounds returned. But the merchant was gone. Vanished. Like he had never been there at all. Alex stood frozen, his heart slamming against his ribs. What had just happened? Was that some kind of bug? A glitch? Or had he just touched something that wasn't supposed to exist? He turned, scanning the marketplace. Every imp was watching him now. Silent, unblinking. Then, one by one, they began to smile. Alex's breath caught in his throat. The imps weren't moving, weren't speaking, just staring and smiling. A deep, sickening rawness settled in his gut. Imps weren't supposed to act like this. They weren't supposed to react when a player did something unexpected. But they were. His pulse pounded as he backed away, trying to act normal, forcing himself to walk, not run. Running would make it worse. Running would make them chase him. No, don't think like that. He turned a corner, stepping into the shadows between two buildings. When he glanced back, the imps had returned to normal. They were talking, moving, trading, as if nothing had happened. But Alex knew better. They had been watching him. He needed help. If he wasn't the only one trapped here, then others had to know more. Tyler had mentioned a group before he vanished. "If anything happens to me, find the Seekers," he had said. "They know what's really going on." Alex hadn't paid much attention at the time. Now it was the only lead he had. Finding the Seekers wasn't easy. No one spoke about them. If he asked the wrong people, they either ignored him or gave him looks that made his skin crawl. But eventually, he got a name. Marcus, the man who had been searching for a way out longer than anyone. Alex found Marcus in a rundown tavern on the outskirts of the city, sitting alone at a corner table. He looked older than most players, his dark hair streaked with gray, his eyes sunken and wary. As soon as Alex sat down, Marcus spoke. "You saw them, didn't you?" Alex stiffened. "What? Thanks?" Marcus leaned in. "They know when we know." A cold chill ran through Alex. Marcus sighed. "You asked about logging out, didn't you?" Alex nodded. Marcus rubbed his face. "Yeah, that's when they start watching." Alex clenched his fists. "What are they?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He just looked at Alex. Then he said, "What do you remember about getting here?" Alex opened his mouth, then hesitated. He remembered putting on the headset, remembered the rush of connection the moment the game started. But then, darkness. Nothing between then and now. Like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. Marcus watched him struggle for an answer. Then he nodded. "That's how it starts." "How it starts?" Alex demanded. Marcus leaned in. "The game isn't keeping us in. Something is keeping our bodies out." The words hit hard. Alex shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. If we're not in the game, where are we?" Marcus' expression darkened. "I don't know, but then it's do." Marcus led Alex through winding back alleys, deeper into the abandoned parts of the city. Finally, they reached an old, half-collapsed building. Inside, a group of players sat around a dimly lit fire. They all looked the same, tired, haunted, too thin for a game where hunger shouldn't exist. One of them, a woman with short red hair, frowned at Alex. "Who's this?" Marcus nodded toward him. "New recruit." She sighed. Another one. Alex's chest tightened. How many of us are there? The woman met his gaze. Too many. Marcus sat down. Tell them what we know. The woman hesitated, then said, Elysium isn't a game. It's a trap. And no one who's been here long enough remembers the real world anymore. Alex's stomach turned. She continued, we think there's a way out. The tower. Marcus nodded. If we reach the tower, we might be able to wake up. Alex gritted his teeth. There was no might. He was getting out. And he was taking Tyler with him. Alex stared into the fire, Marcus's words sinking in like a heavy weight. The tower. The way out. He clenched his fists. Where is it? The red-haired woman who introduced herself as Leah sighed. That's the problem. The tower isn't on any map. It moves. Alex frowned. Moves. Marcus nodded. One day it's on the horizon, the next it's gone. We spent months tracking it. Then pretend it doesn't exist, but sometimes they slip up. Alex's mind raced. A structure that moved, that made no sense. Even in a game, locations didn't just disappear. But this wasn't a game, was it? He exhaled. So how do we find it? Marcus and Lee exchanged a look. Then Lee said, we don't. It finds us. Alex barely slept that night. The others rested in shifts, their weapons never far from reach. He could feel the exhaustion pressing in on all of them. Some of them had been here for years. And the worst part, they didn't even remember how long. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts looping back to Tyler. Was he trapped somewhere too, stuck in the Lost District? Or worse, had he forgotten he was trapped? Alex swore under his breath. He wasn't going to let that happen. He was getting out. And if the tower was the only way, he'd find it. No matter what. The next morning, Marcus led them out of the hideout. There's a place on the outskirts of the city, he explained. It's the only spot that it's a void. We think it's connected to the tower. Alex followed in silence, scanning the streets. He didn't trust anything about this world anymore. Every imp felt like a set of watching eyes, every shadow like it was hiding something. Finally, they reached the edge of the city. The cobbled streets gave way to cracked stone, overgrown with dark vines. An eerie fog rolled through the air, thick and unnatural. And then Alex saw it. The statue. A towering humanoid figure carved from black stone, its face featureless, its arms outstretched. But what made his stomach drop was the words engraved at its base. Wake up. His breath hitched. You see it, don't you? Lee's voice was quiet. Alex swallowed. What is this? Marcus exhaled. We don't know, but look closer. Alex hesitated, then stepped forward. He brushed his fingers against the stone, and everything changed. The ground beneath him shifted, the air crackled. Suddenly, the sky overhead wasn't the deep violet of Elysium anymore. It was black. Stars blinked into existence, spiraling and twisting like a glitching simulation. The world around him warped, as if the game itself was struggling to hold its shape. Then, on the horizon, the tower appeared. Tall, endless, its surface shimmering, like it wasn't fully real. But before Alex could move, a hand grabbed his wrist. We need to go, Marcus hissed. Alex turned and froze. The next were coming. Hundreds of them. They moved in eerie unison, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. Their faces were wrong, stretched into unnatural smiles. And their eyes were completely black. Marcus yanked him back. Run. They sprinted through the fog, the tower still looming in the distance. But as they ran, Alex heard something behind him. Not footsteps, whispers. They slithered into his ears, into his mind, words he couldn't quite understand. But one thing was clear. The game didn't want them to reach the tower. Alex's lungs burned as he ran. The tower loomed in the distance, but the whispers pressed against his mind, curling around his thoughts like smoke. Turn back. This is where you belong. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. His vision blurred for a moment, and for a terrifying second, the world glitched. The sky flickered. The ground beneath his feet shifted, as if the entire world was trying to reset itself. Then the whispers were gone. But the Inks weren't. They were still following, no hunting. Their black eyes locked onto him, their synchronized footsteps echoing like a single, endless drumbeat. Marcus yanked Alex forward. Don't listen to them. They'll get inside your head if you let them. Alex shook off the lingering haze and pushed himself harder. Ahead, the road sloped downward, leading into a canyon of jagged black stone. The fog clung to the rocks like a living thing. Lee shouted from behind, "Down here. It's the only way." They darted into the canyon, twisting through narrow passages, then silent as they followed. Alex's heart pounded. No matter how fast they ran, the Inks never slowed, never broke formation, never stopped smiling. The canyon opened into a vast, desolate expanse. The tower was closer now, its dark surface shifting like it wasn't entirely in this world. But something else was waiting. A gate, massive, metallic, covered in symbols that Alex couldn't understand. But Marcus didn't hesitate. He ran straight to it, pressing his hand against the surface. "This is it," he panted. "This leads to the tower." Alex reached for the gate, and a voice ripped through the air. "Step away." He turned, and Nink stood at the canyon's edge. But this one was different. Tyler, clad in dark robes. Its face wasn't smiling. It was blank, a void where a face should be. "You do not belong there," it said. The ground trembled. The symbols on the gate shifted, as if reacting to the Nink's presence. Marcus grabbed Alex's arm. "Don't listen to it. It's trying to stop us." Alex took a step forward. The imp twitched. Its head jerked unnaturally, as if struggling to hold its form. "Wake up." The world glitched again. For a split second, Alex saw something else. Not the canyon, not the game, but a room. Cold, sterile, filled with screens flashing unreadable data. Shadows moved beyond the glass walls. Figures, watching, waiting. Then, the vision was gone. He was back in Elysium, but his heart was racing. That wasn't part of the game. Marcus grabbed him. "Alex, we don't have time. Go through the gate." Then it moved. Not ran, moved. One second it was at the canyon's edge. The next, it was inches from Alex, its hollow face inches from his own. "Wake up." A sharp pain exploded in Alex's skull. He saw flashes. Tyler, strapped to a chair, eyes open, but vacant, wires connected to his head. Screens. Data scrolling too fast to read. People in white coats, watching, writing things down. This isn't a game. A voice, distant and cold, subject exhibiting resistance. Prepare for reset. Alex gasped, and Marcus shoved him through the gate. The world broke apart. Alex fell. Not down, not up, just through. The world around him fractured, colors bleeding into one another, his body weightless. The whispers returned, but now they weren't just words. They were memories. A headset being placed on his head. A voice saying, "Don't fight it. Let the simulation take hold." Tyler's voice, distant. "Alex, something's wrong." Then, darkness. When Alex's eyes opened, he was somewhere else. The air was thick and heavy, the sky above a swirling void. He lay on cold, metallic ground, a vast open platform stretching into endless nothingness. And in the distance, the tower. Closer now, impossibly tall. A structure that looked like it had been stitched together from different realities, its surface shifting between stone, metal, and something that looked disturbingly like flesh. Marcus and Lee were beside him, both breathing hard, their eyes wide with the same mix of fear and awe. "We made it," Leah whispered. Marcus pulled himself up. Not yet. Alex's head was still spinning. The vision, what he had seen. Tyler strapped to a chair, the people in white coats. His stomach twisted. It wasn't a game. It was never a game. Lee grabbed his arm. "Alex, we need to move." He forced himself to stand, his legs unsteady. Then he noticed they weren't alone. Figures stood between them and the tower, but they weren't Inks. They weren't anything he had seen before. Tall, faceless things. Their bodies stretched and flickered, like they weren't entirely in sync with reality. And they were watching. Marcus tensed. They only appear when someone gets this far. Alex swallowed. What are they? Leah's voice was tight. The Guardians. As soon as she spoke the word, the figures moved. Not walked, just appeared closer. Then closer. Alex's breath caught. What do we do? He whispered. Marcus's jaw clenched. We run. They sprinted toward the tower. The Guardians didn't chase them. They shifted, closing the space between them in an instant. One of them appeared directly in front of Alex. He barely stopped in time, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The Guardian tilted its head, almost curiously. Then, in a voice that was not a voice, it spoke. Turn back. A deep, unnatural pressure crushed Alex's mind. His thoughts split, fragments of memories unraveling. His first day in Elysium. But there was no first day, was there? No tutorial. No loading screen. Just existing. Tyler laughing, then screaming, then gone. The pressure grew, a presence forcing itself into his thoughts, rewriting, erasing. No. Alex gritted his teeth. He shoved back against the feeling, his mind burning. The Guardian jerked, as if surprised. Then, for the first time, it stepped away. Marcus grabbed Alex's wrist. Move. They bolted for the tower, the Guardians hesitating for the first time. Then, the tower's entrance opened, a doorway of pure white light. Leah gasped. We made it. Alex turned back. The Guardians had stopped chasing. They stood at the edge of the platform, motionless, watching, like they weren't allowed to enter. Alex swallowed hard. Whatever was inside the tower, it was something even they feared. Alex stepped forward, his body tense as the white light of the tower's entrance pulsed before him. Marcus and Lee stood beside him, staring at the doorway with the same mix of fear and desperation. The Guardians remained still behind them, unmoving, as if the tower was a boundary they couldn't cross. Alex swallowed. This is it. Marcus exhaled. No turning back. They stepped inside. The world changed the moment they crossed the threshold. Gone was the endless platform. Gone was the swirling void of the sky. They were in a room. White walls, white floor, the air sterile and heavy. A lab. Alex's breath hitched. The images from his vision slammed into him all at once. The chairs, the monitors, the wires. This place was real. A screen flickered to life on the far wall. Static buzzed, then a voice, calm, professional. Subjects 034, 127, and 202 have reached phase 3. Alex's blood turned to ice. Subjects. Leah gripped his arm. What does that mean? Alex shook his head, his heart hammering. Marcus took a step forward. Who's there? The screen glitched. The static deepened. Then, an image flickered into view. Not a game, not a simulation. A surveillance feed. A room full of people in lab coats. Monitors tracking data. A row of chairs, each occupied by someone wearing a VR headset. One of them was Tyler. Alex staggered back. The voice spoke again. This test was never about escape. You were never meant to win. Leah gasped. They're watching us. Marcus clenched his fists. Who the hell are you? The screen glitched again. Then, for the first time, the voice sounded human. A woman's voice, cold, detached. We are the architects, and you are our data. Alex's mind reeled. Data, not players, not trapped victims. They were part of something else, something they never agreed to. His hands curled into fists. What are you doing to us? The woman's voice remained emotionless, studying persistence, adaptability, how the human mind copes with simulated reality. Marcus' jaw tightened. How long have we been here? The screen flickered, lines of code flashing too fast to read. Then the answer came. Subject 034, 8 years. Subject 127, 5 years. Subject 202, 3 years. Silence. Alex's chest seized. 3 years. His knees nearly buckled. No, Leah whispered, shaking her head. That's not possible. Alex's hands trembled. We don't even remember. The voice confirmed it. Memories degrade over time. The simulation resets as needed. Marcus's breathing turned ragged. You wipe our minds. We correct errors. Alex gritted his teeth. Then why let us come this far? Why let us find the tower? For the first time, there was a pause. Then the woman's voice said something that made the air leave his lungs. We didn't. The screen shut off. The lights flickered. Then, a siren blared. Red emergency lights bathed the room. A new voice, urgent, sharp. Not the woman's. Breach detected. External force overriding protocol. Alex spun. The walls were glitching, revealing glimpses of something else. Hallways, doors, the real world. Lee gasped. Someone's trying to get us out. Marcus grabbed Alex's shoulder. This is our chance. The simulation was breaking. They had to move. Before the architects stopped them, alarms wailed through the sterile white room. Red emergency lights pulsed like a heartbeat, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The simulation was breaking. But Alex's body refused to move. 3 years. That number clung to his mind like a parasite, gnawing at the edges of his reality. They had stolen 3 years of his life, erased his memories, trapped him in a world that wasn't real. A sharp tug on his arm yanked him back to the present. Alex, we have to go. Lee's voice was urgent, her eyes wide with panic. Marcus was already moving, scanning the glitching walls for a way out. The screen that had spoken to them was now just static, flickering with distorted images, blueprints of the tower, unreadable code, blurry figures in lab coats rushing through real-world hallways. Then, the woman's voice returned, but now it was different, strained. This anomaly was not anticipated. Rerouting control, correcting error. The walls shuddered. The entire space warped, twisting, as if trying to reshape itself. And then, the Guardians stepped through the walls, not glitching, not flickering, fully formed. They moved in eerie silence, their faceless heads tilting unnaturally as they closed in. Marcus cursed. They're sending the men to reset us. Alex forced himself to focus. We're not letting that happen. He turned, searching the glitching walls for an opening. Glimpses of the real world kept flickering through corridors, metal doors, flashing warning signs. They were right there. The walls pulsed, trying to force the simulation back into shape. But the breach was getting worse. A section of the wall on their left glitched hard, revealing a hallway that didn't belong to the game. Marcus didn't hesitate. There, go. They sprinted toward it. The Guardians reacted instantly. They moved without sound, appearing rather than stepping, blocking the way. One loomed directly in front of Alex, its faceless void mere inches from his own. Terminate sequence. A crushing force slammed into his mind. Memories fractured. A birthday cake. Laughter. A home. Gone, replaced, rewritten. His body froze. The simulation was trying to take him back. No. No. With every ounce of strength, Alex fought back. The pressure in his skull built to a breaking point, and then something snapped. The Guardian reeled back, as if burned. The crushing weight vanished. Alex stumbled but caught himself. Lee and Marcus were already pushing forward, forcing their way through the glitching gap in the wall. Alex didn't look back. He ran. The moment they crossed into the hallway, the simulation collapsed behind them. The walls sealed shut, the sirens blaring louder. But this place, this was real. Gray concrete walls, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, cold air, the sterile scent of chemicals and machinery. They weren't in Elysium anymore. Marcus's chest rose and fell rapidly. Where the hell are we? Lee turned in circles, taking it in. Some kind of research facility. Alex's fist clenched. This is where they've been keeping us. A loud hiss cut through the air. At the far end of the hall, a metal door slid open. A shadowed figure stepped through. Not a guardian, a person. They wore a dark coat, their face obscured by the dim lighting. But their voice was clear. You weren't supposed to make it this far. Alex's breath came in short gasps as he stared at the figure in the doorway. The man stood still, his posture eerily calm despite the sirens wailing around them. His coat was long dark, the edges fluttering slightly as if the air itself recoiled from him. Lee whispered, "Who is he?" Marcus tensed. "Someone who doesn't want us to leave." The man took a slow step forward. "You don't understand what you've done." His voice was measured, almost gentle. "You weren't supposed to wake up." Alex's fist clenched. "We were never supposed to be here." The man nodded, as if considering that. Then he sighed. "It's unfortunate, but this experiment must continue." He raised his hand. The air rippled. Pain ripped through Alex's skull, sudden and violent. He staggered, vision flashing between two realities. The hallway, the simulation, the tower. A room filled with unconscious bodies, strapped into chairs. His mind buckled. The simulation was trying to pull them back. Marcus gritted his teeth, fighting to stay grounded. He's forcing a reset. Lee grabbed Alex's arm, her touch an anchor. "We're not going back." The man's expression remained passive. "You don't have a choice." But then, something glitched. Not in the simulation, in reality. The walls flickered, the sirens warped into static. The man's face twisted in confusion. "What?" Then Alex saw it, a second figure at the far end of the hall. Hidden in the shadows, silent, watching. Then, a voice. "They do have a choice." The air shattered. The pain in Alex's head vanished. The flickering stopped. The man in the dark coat staggered, as if something had struck him. Alex's pulse pounded. Whole. The figure at the end of the hall stepped forward. The dim lights illuminated his face. It was Tyler. Alive, awake, standing in the real world. But there was something different about him. His eyes burned with a strange, unstoppable certainty. Lee gasped. "You? How did you?" Tyler didn't answer. He raised his hand, and suddenly the man in the dark coat froze, his body locking in place. The air hummed. Reality itself seemed to bend. Tyler looked at Alex. "This place isn't real either." Alex's breath caught. "What?" Tyler's expression was grim. "This facility, this world, it's just another layer." Marcus' voice was hoarse. "You're saying?" Tyler nodded. "We never really woke up." The realization hit like a thunderclap. The research facility, the escape, the truth they thought they had found. It was just another illusion, another simulation. The architects hadn't lost control. They had just made them think they had. Tyler's gaze hardened. "But I know how to get out. The real way." The man in the dark coat struggled against the invisible force holding him. "You don't understand what's at stake." Tyler ignored him. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small, flickering device. "This ends now." He pressed a button. The world fractured. Everything collapsed. Alex's eyes flew open. For the first time in years, he was awake. For real.